A woman dressed in colonial clothes sits at a harp. A man in a red coated uniform and a black hat stands in front of a drum.
Good morning. This is a presentation on colonial music. I'm Dan, and this is my wife Janice, and she'll be playing the harp for you. Music, we're dividing music into two sections, really. First of all, there was the military music, which was very important for different reasons. Popular music was tunes of the day, a lot of ballads and different things like that, or even work songs. The fifers and drummers were essential to a unit. One thing to remember is that back in that time, people didn't have clocks. Pocket watches were very expensive. So in that case, we had to have some kind of sound to let the troops know when they were supposed to perform certain duties. The first thing that the troops would hear in the morning would be a drummer's call, which told the musicians, the drummers and the fifers, to come out, form up, and get ready to play reveille. And I'll play that for you first. And after that, I'll play reveille, and it sounds different than what you may expect it to be. Okay, here's the drummer's call. So there you go, and the head drummer and head fifer would be the ones to play this tune. The other musicians would come out. Next would be reveille. So that was reveille. Bugles were only used by cavalry during the colonial times. Later on, trumpets and things were used, but up to the Civil War, fifes and drums were really the thing that played what we call the duty tunes for the troops. There's a tune for retreat. Now, retreat is not really what you might think it is. Retreat, and this goes back to medieval times when retreat was played. It was time for people to come back into the camp or back into the castle if they were in Europe. So it's different from the end of the day, which is going to be called tattoo or tap two. Tap two is, I've heard it explained in different ways. One is like they left the bars and they closed the tap to the beer kegs. Also, the songs begin with 3 taps on the drum. Tap, tap, tap. So that's where that comes from. Taps really was a drum signal, and that started off the beginning of the retreat tunes or the end of the day tunes. And part of retreat was a tune. It could also be used when the troops were getting ready to move out. They would play that, and all the troops would line up in front of their tents, release the tent lines, and let the tents fall over, and then they'd gather them up and pack up and leave. So, and other things, they also had tunes for funerals. Rosslyn Castle is one. And of course, the thing we usually think about is tunes we played to march, but that was only one part of what a fifer and drummer did. They had really a lot of duties, a lot of things to learn. And next, I'm going to play "Girl I Left Behind." That's a very recognizable tune, and it was often used when the troops were getting ready to leave their camp. They were getting ready to move out somewhere. And the story with that, "The Girl I Left Behind," is that there was an Irish commander, and no matter where they were stationed, it seemed like he always had a girlfriend. So they played it mainly for him, I guess, to embarrass him or to bring that out. Anyway, here we go. "Girl I Left Behind." South Carolina Left Behind. I didn't say anything about the fife. It actually carries very well. It's pretty loud if you're close to it, and I've heard it played even a mile away. And the instrument itself is wood with 6 holes, which makes it easily transportable. You didn't have to worry about keys breaking off or that sort of thing. It's actually somewhere between a concert flute and a piccolo. And again, it has 6 holes in it, which allows you to play a lot of different tunes. And you can actually get a lot of notes that are out of the scale, out of the scale that it's tuned to. Okay, uniforms. What I'm wearing here is the South Carolina, 2nd South Carolina hat. And you notice it's got a crescent on it. That crescent was what went on that state flag for South Carolina. Actually, the 2nd South Carolina was not at this location during the war, but they were down at Fort Moultrie. And it's interesting that this is really early helmet. The helmets actually had little steel bars or plates inside of it to protect people's head. Remember, there were cavalry units, and they loved to swing their swords when they came through, and they could hit you on your head, your shoulders, and this gave a little bit of protection to the troops. Red coats. I love this because a lot of people don't realize the musicians had what they call reverse colors. Notice I've got 2 colors on. I've got blue on the lapel, and I've got red on the body of the coat. So the red is just the opposite from what most troops would wear. The South Carolina troops would have blue as their main color, and they would have red trim on the lapel. So that's what we call our reverse colors. And on the other hand, the British soldiers, since most of their jackets were red, many musicians would have a blue outer body on their jacket and red lapels. So that's something most people don't realize, and I get a lot of people calling me, "Hey, you red coat, you British red coat." No, I'm not a British red coat. Drums mark time for music, for marches, and usually we had a fife tune for most of them. Now there was one, if you did a drum roll, it was what they named a call to arms, which meant you might be under attack. And it's just, that's crude. But anyway, that was one thing the drums were used for an alarm. If you couldn't practice that in camp during the day because everybody would get all excited and think they were under attack. But that was really the role of the drum with the fife.
How often would the musicians go into battle with the troops? Would they call actions for them? Like from the commanders, they would relate what's supposed to happen?
Very good question, yeah. Usually the musicians would stand behind the line of the men with the muskets or rifles, so they were kind of away from them. Now, one thing, my theory is that if the musicians had red coats on, the British were less likely to shoot at them because the musicians were non-combatants. In the same way with the British troops, if the Americans saw a British musician with a blue coat on, they were less likely to shoot at him. Not to say that didn't happen, at least accidentally. Some of the calls they did, there's even a drum call for firing with muskets. And this is so that everybody can be together when they fire. They would do that, and they would prepare them to get their muskets ready to shoot. So they did really echo the commanders' commands. And at the end of the day, they would play some tunes for tattoo, and that's where the drums did the taps. So they had all kinds of duties that are not really obvious, but it was a full-time job. And it took some training to get the musicians up to speed. And usually the musicians had rank equal to corporal as soon as they became proficient on their instrument.
How many musicians would be with the troop or battalion?
For just a regiment, normally a small group would have a fifer and a drummer, which is just 2. And sometimes they may not have just a drummer, because trained musicians could get scarce. Now large groups, when they got together, say as a battalion, they could combine musicians, and you might have a dozen musicians, but usually you didn't have that many unless there's something very unusual. Tunes, some of the fife tunes actually were like dance tunes that they played for gathering the troops together to take roll. Janice will be doing some popular songs here in a minute. Tunes and songs are really different, something that has been impressed on us. The tunes, say like Danny Boy is a tune, but it has different words to it. Londonderry Air is the name for Danny Boy. Danny Boy words are fairly recent, so we don't, we're not supposed to sing the words to that. But the tune is very old and nobody's really sure exactly when it originated. We're going to switch over now. This is more everyday songs that they might play on a harp. And a harp was probably not terribly common. Usually violins and flutes are the most common instruments.
The song I'm going to play for you first is Annie Laurie. And Annie Laurie aren't here today, are they?
Oh, darn.
But we say this is about the girls that come here too. Annie Laurie was a very popular song. So White Cockade, you want to tell them something about that?
Oh, White Cockade is a very interesting tune. White Cockade is Scottish. Now, right before the American Revolution, the Scots rebelled in England, and they fought against the British, but unfortunately they lost. And so when the Scots were recruited into the British Army, and they came over to the United States, the Americans would play that to, I guess it was just kind of making fun of them. I mean, to make them feel bad. Let's see, the other one, Yankee Doodle is interesting too, because Yankee Doodle is an old tune. The British originally played that to make fun of the Americans, to imply that they were nothing but just dumb doodles. But the Americans got even with the British by playing it toward them. And this is another example of different words. The Americans had their words for Yankee Doodle, and of course the British had their words also for that.
Flow Gently, Sweet Afton, and it's got a river that it's named for a river, and the tune to it is also Away in a Manger for Christmas.
Go ahead.
This one is called Meadowlark. Called My Little Welch Home. My Little Welch Home.